These are 10 of my absolute favourite plant hacks that save you time and money and generally help you become a better plant parent. Now let's get straight to it. You would have heard me preach about the importance of cleaning our houseplants so that they can better access the light to photosynthesize. For most plants, this means giving them a wipe with a damp cloth or even giving your plants a shower once in a while. Well, what about succulents? Succulents like echeverias normally have a coating called farina on the leaves that protects them from the elements. So rubbing them with a damp cloth, giving them a shower, or even just touching them with your fingers is a big no-no. The solution, my plant friends, is to use a good old toothbrush. If there is some dirt in the nooks and crannies of the succulent that you just can't get to without fat fingering them, then a good old toothbrush will be your best friend. If you bottom water your plants and you notice a build-up of condensation on the underside of the saucer that is leaving a mark on your windowsill, then this is the hack for you. This condensation problem is most apparent with terracotta pots. They're highly porous, so the water easily transfers to the surface they are sat on. Over time, this will leave a mark or even warp the wood. This is what's happened to mine. The solution is using those cheap cork mats that you can buy from IKEA. These mats, of course, are meant for the kitchen to place your hot saucepans on to protect your kitchen surfaces, but we can use them for our plants. They really are a godsend, and you'll find them all over my house. They come in a pack of 3 and they cost a whopping £2.50. I normally fill up my trolley with these whenever I go to IKEA. For plastic pots, I usually just place 1 underneath, but for terracotta pots, I put a minimum of 2 underneath to protect the surface from excess moisture. What do you do when you've all but given up on your plant? When not even Obi-Wan Kenobi can save it? Maybe it's been suffering for a few weeks and nothing you do seems to bring it back to life. Chances are you chuck it in the trash, vow to never buy it again, and tend to your other plants. Well, if you're not taking at least 1 cutting before throwing it away, then you're missing a trick. Sometimes plants go wrong. There's something not quite right with it and it just wants to give up. Maybe there's something in the soil or disease in the roots that means it's destined for only one place. Well, starting again by taking stem cuttings can be a fantastic option to let the plant live on in your home. If the problem is in the soil, then taking cuttings allows you to part ties with the plant and see if you can raise it from scratch. All we do is find a healthy stem portion, just cut underneath a leaf node. Remove the lower leaves, leaving 1 or 2 leaves at the top. Pop them into a glass of water, place somewhere bright, and wait for roots to sprout in a few weeks. Pot them on into soil when roots are a couple of inches long and then nurture your new plant lovingly. If the cutting's not happy, then there's something in your home that this particular plant does not like, but at least you gave it a shot. I love this next hack because it's so crafty and oddly satisfying. One of your main concerns as an indoor plant parent should be to protect your babies from unwanted visitors. Plants such as spider mites and thrips are secret killers, literally sucking the sap out of your plant slowly but methodically. The trouble is that these little buggers are just too small to see with the naked eye, which means we normally spot the damage they've done before we even spot the pest. Well, a nifty solution to this problem is to pick up a lint brush that you can find in your local hardware store or IKEA and roll it against the leaves of your plants. Focus your attention on the underside and where the leaf meets the petiole and stem, because this is where the little critters will be hanging out. Inspect the brush and check to see if you've picked up any little black or orange specks. If you have, then you need to take action to treat your plant as soon as you can so the problem doesn't spread to the rest of your collection. And I'll put a link up in the corner for my video all about houseplant pests and how to deal with them. Humidity is one of the hottest topics in the houseplant community, as lots of us argue about the efficacy of humidity increasing hacks we've all seen on the internet. My personal belief is that it's virtually impossible to create the sufficiently high humidity levels found in the jungle where these plants habitat from with anything other than a closed system. There are just too many air changes in our leaky homes to keep in the high humidity we may be creating with our humidifier to have any lasting impact. For smaller, younger plants, there are options though, and one of my favourites is using mason jars as covers for baby plants. Grab your clean mason jar and simply just pop it over the plant, pressing it into the soil slightly to secure it in place. This traps in the humidity that the plant will create itself and creates the ideal environment for it to grow stronger and develop into a responsible adult. You'll notice condensation in the jar within only an hour or two, and this is when you know it's working. Just take the jar off the plant for half an hour every couple of days to give it a breather. This next hack is a real time saver and goes against what pretty much everyone says you should do when repotting your plant. A couple of months ago, I made a short about creating an indentation in the soil prior to repotting your plant. It's a nifty little way to make it easier to place your plant in its new soil without having to awkwardly add the soil around the plant. And the comment section to this video highlighted one thing to me, that the prevailing wisdom out there is that you must remove all the old soil and break up the roots before repotting. But why? Basically, we've been told to countless times when in fact it's really not necessary. I stopped breaking up the roots of my plants over a year ago and never been happier. I made a similar video about my large monstera and the comment section was the same. You must break up the roots or the plant will die. Well, it's still here putting out lots of new leaves, and so is the Hoya that featured in my other short. So just save yourself loads of time and mess and just repot your plant without breaking up the roots. It will be fine. I'm always trying to find thrifty solutions to plant problems, and this one is no different. It seems I'm constantly running out of plastic nursery pots to keep all my plants in. It's the bane of my life. And they're surprisingly expensive too, and the cost does mount up when you have to go to B&Q every week to buy yet more pots for plants that you need repotting. A thrifty solution then is to reuse used food containers as plant pots instead of throwing them out in the trash. And the perfect example of this is jam jars and used yogurt pots. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and are perfect to be used as little plant pots. Just give them a good wash when all the food has been eaten up, and then add some holes to the bottom to allow water to drain through. You can use a drill to do this, or I'll just use a Stanley knife to carefully carve holes into the bottom. This is important because you do want good drainage to avoid the plant sitting in standing water. Pop them into a decorative pot to hide the fact that you're recycling used food containers, and you're good to go. Do you want to have the best looking plant display in the neighbourhood? Of course you do. Well, a fantastic hack to achieve this is to layer your plant display by using everyday household objects. You see lots of fancy tiered plant stands for sale all over the internet these days, and they cost a pretty penny too. To create a similar effect, you can use things like upended bowls, cups, pots, or anything else that can have a plant plonked on top of to give it some height. This creates visual interest because not everything is at the same level. Not only is this great aesthetically, it's also great for allowing all the plants on your windowsill to get the light they need without being blocked by taller friends next to them. If you have a couple of tall plants next to a small one, then simply place something underneath it to raise the level so they can access its fair share of the light. For our plants to live their absolute best lives, we need to make sure we feed and water them. It's the feeding part that lots of casual plant owners forget about, and they end up with a dull looking plant in their homes. There are tons of great fertilisers out there, but they're often not cheap. A bottle of concentrated liquid fertiliser will normally set you back between £10 and £20. The alternative then is to make your own. In a previous video, I showed a fantastic recipe that involves steeping tea and oats in hot water. I'll add the link to that video in the corner for you to check out. But another great free option is to make use of the water you use for boiling your potatoes. Instead of discarding this water down the sink when draining, capture it and use it to water your plants. There are tons of beneficial nutrients including potassium, phosphorus, magnesium and B vitamins that leach into the water as you cook your potatoes and will do wonders for your plants. It's an environmental and thrifty way to fertilise your indoor jungle. What's not to love about that? You'll probably have heard countless times that houseplants should never ever be placed in direct sun, otherwise the leaves will scorch and your plant will die. In my experience though, this is not really true. An neat little hack for super healthy plants is to give them at least a couple of hours of early morning sun or late afternoon sun. All plants need lots of light. Don't believe the tags that say medium or low light for certain plants like ZZ plants or snake plants. They all benefit from as much light as possible, and to really turbocharge their growth, I find a couple of hours of light sunlight can be an excellent thing. I mention this, as well as lots of other fantastic care tips in my recent Monstera tips video that you can check out by clicking on the link here.